no solution for texting, which was shocking. I built it, sent out the first text, and literally I had every nightclub owner, promoter, everyone call me and be like, how the hell did you just do that?
Shane Neman, CIO and general partner of Neman Ventures, has built his career on finding value where others don't. From backing over 50 startups like Impossible Foods, Flexport, and Kraken, to investing in real estate gems like Pacific Park and the Racket Lounge, Shane has a unique approach to seizing asymmetrical opportunities.
We had an app store, we saved your stuff in the cloud, and we were a SaaS company, but none of those words existed. That was my first taste of building something and then just getting punched in the face and falling down again.
In this episode, Shane reveals how he's cultivated a keen eye for high-growth investments across venture capital, real estate, and private equity.
The better decision maker you are, the better you tend to do. It's very hard for a 20-year-old to understand how much can happen in 10 to 15 years and how much money can compound.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is part of the HubSpot podcast network. I'm also a big user of HubSpot products. They've supported the show for over 3 years now. And for all entrepreneurs out there, I need you to go back to a time and place when building businesses, as tough as it is, can be sometimes a little bit fun. When you're marketing, it should be fun. But marketing is not so fun anymore because it's very time consuming, it's very difficult, and it feels like there's just a lot of friction. Content was simpler to make, leads were easier to capture, and we weren't all spread so thin. As marketers, as entrepreneurs, the bottom line is that marketing used to be fun. It's not so fun anymore. But with HubSpot's newly launched marketing and content hubs, I've been using it myself, it brings a little bit of fun and creativity back into marketing for your business. You're going to generate better content, they're going to generate more leads, and next level results, which really make marketing fun again. So with tools like Content Remix, you can turn existing assets into all new pieces with just one click. Lead scoring helps you shine a light on the leads that are most likely to purchase, and analytics suites they built out will help you with reports, KPIs, and just a gold mine of AI-powered insights. It's quick to get your results. It's easy to use. It connects all your teams and your data. So put the fun back into your marketing funnel with HubSpot. Visit HubSpot.com to get started for free. Shane, I'm glad we finally got to sit down. This has been a long time coming.
It's been a lot of false starts, but
yeah. It has been. Listen, I was in the middle of a move.
That's okay. Congratulations on your move. Beautiful home, beautiful studio. I'm very happy for you and your family.
Yeah, now we're getting more entrenched in South Florida.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fort Lauderdale to Miami, it's like now you're a real Miamian.
A real Miamian. Well, listen, like this was a lot of effort for the past 2 months, but it's worth it. So I'm happy. But
well,
anyways,
it's beautiful.
It's not about me.
Enjoy it.
I will enjoy it. It's the first of many. I know we're only going to do like a little one this afternoon, but you'll have to come on again. And then when you don't have to go run off for your kids.
You invite me, I'll come.
Deal.
No problem.
Deal. Well, you do a lot of cool stuff, so I think there's going to be a lot of future stuff to talk about too. You're not done quite yet.
No, I don't think so, but we'll see.
Let's kick it off for people that don't know you. We'll talk a little bit about your background, where you came from. I think you have an interesting story. So you were, your parents were immigrants from Iran. Yes. And they came over at the end of, during the revolution or right before, I guess.
They came during in the late 70s. I guess right before it kind of really tipped. And I was born here in the United States, so I was lucky in that manner. And you know, kind of classic immigrant story. They're Jewish, so they definitely had to leave because at that time being Jewish in Iran was not not that it's working now.
No, it's not much better now.
But it was definitely not a great place to be. And you know, they came to New York and they started over. They had a great life in Iran. You know, probably upper middle class family. My dad was an architect. My mom was a teacher. And, you know, I was an only child at that time, their first child. And so, you know, I watched them go from zero. I mean, I was sleeping at the foot of their bed until I was, I don't know, 10.
So when they came over, it was pure immigrant mentality, immigrant hustle. They had to start from scratch, or?
Absolutely. So my dad couldn't be an architect. He'd have to go back to school again to get the licenses and everything, which just didn't make any sense. So he decided to go into clothing because he had design skills, and, started very humbly selling clothes to boutiques, and then opened their own boutique, and then opened their own knitwear manufacturing company. And then about a decade later, finally was able to buy their own house. And, kind of American immigrant story where I remember falling asleep in our basement at 2:00 in the morning, watching them work, literally making clothes.
Nonstop.
Yeah. And I was in fourth grade,
And then if you look back, like obviously you've built businesses, now you're an investor, and you look back at your whole life and there's been lots of different seasons to your life. What was that? Was it them working exceptionally hard that was a major influence on you? Was it because they were super entrepreneurial, they had to restart that, like light the fire? Was it like, what was that inflection point in your life?
I think the inflection point for me was actually, there were many inflection points in my life. I had some pretty significant things happen to me early in my life. My father passed away when I was 13. So that taught me, and he was 44.
He was young.
He was very young. He got stomach cancer, died within 3 months. And my mother was not the breadwinner, but had to learn and start over. So I learned that from my mother, and she was actually perpetually ill her entire life. She had renal disease and had a few kidney transplants, and she had a lot of health issues. And despite that, she was a very successful businesswoman. Went into real estate after my dad passed, and against all odds, made it. Really kind of pushed through, never had any excuses. So I saw these things. I understood how fleeting and unfair life could be, let's just say. And my dad passed when he was 44. So that was the measuring stick for me. I was like, I got to get everything done before 44, because I don't know if I'm going to make it till
That's actually very scary when you see that, when that's your reality.
Yeah.
You're in high school, okay, you're 15, 16, 17, you're going off to college, university, you're turning 20, you're like, my life's half over.
Absolutely. It sounds really messed up, but that's the way I thought about it. I kind of really understood the value of hard work in the beginning of college. So I went to NYU, and I was pre-med actually, and I took my first chem exam, and I thought I was smart until I took my first chem exam, and I got an F, which literally was a punch in the face to me, ego-wise and everything like that, because I had kind of coasted by in high school without having to work too hard. And then I realized that that's not going to really work in the real world. Let's just put it that way.
I actually had the same. University was like a slap to the face, because in high school I could do whatever I wanted and still, yeah.
I was partying all the time, hanging out with my friends, doing my homework last minute, studying right before the test. And I thought that would fly, when there's 600 other kids in my class that are infinitely smarter and work a lot more than I do. And that actually was a tipping point, an inflection point for me. I literally realized at that point that I can't do that. And I went into this kind of like crazy work mode. I went into founder mode.
Yeah. I found the Paul Graham founder mode. And but that was, so just back up for a second. Why did you go into med school in the beginning?
Well,
because med school is not founder mode. Med school is like...
No, but getting into med school is founder mode, okay. Just to be honest, because it's so... I don't know how it is now, but I'm talking about 25 years ago almost, right? And more. It's more than 25 years ago. So at that time, it was still kind of like respectable to want to be a doctor, and there was prestige, and there was... honor in it, which actually, by the way, I think there is. I think that being a doctor is probably the most noble profession you can be in. It's very important. But I think that people who do it now really have to love it, because doctors are underpaid, overworked, right? And underappreciated.
And I think that also what you're saying is very true. So 25 years ago, I would say that entrepreneurship is not a thing the way it is now.
No,
Like,
it wasn't glamorized.
Is like doctor, lawyer is pretty much the epitome of career success. Being an entrepreneur was not. Now it's like popular, it's all over YouTube, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. But
yes, they don't realize how much it really sucks. But that's another conversation. But yeah, I came from an immigrant family, doctor, lawyer. I also had my father pass and my mom be sick her entire life, and so I was motivated by that, let's just say. But to get into med school was very difficult. I don't know how it is right now. It was very competitive, and you had to study a lot. You had to take pre-med classes, and you had to take an MCAT, which was really crazy hard too. And to get into a top medical school was not easy. And so I made that my mission, and that was my goal. And to achieve that goal, I had to really work hard at it.
But then you chose to not go down that path.
So I actually went to med school. I studied computer science as a backup in college.
Like an undergrad, or?
Yeah, an undergrad. So you can actually major in whatever you want, English, Spanish, you could do anything, actually, home economics or whatever you want to do, right? As long as you take the pre-med classes and you take the MCAT, you can get into medical school. So I actually did computer science because as a backup of like getting a job in case I didn't get into med school, right?
It's not a bad backup. 25 years ago was not as popular. Again, you were kind of ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, because computer science now, it's like, yeah, you want your kid to be able to code, but 25 years ago, like I don't even, what kind of computers were you coding on 25 years ago?
I learned on Turbo Pascal, which was like just an IBM, worked on like a regular IBM PC type company. So I learned, I think it wasn't like still in the early days, but it was pretty advanced at that time. And then Java came out, and so there was object-oriented programming and stuff like that. But it was crazy because actually you're right. Most of the classes I had to take were graduate level classes because they didn't have enough classes in undergrad to kind of constitute a computer science major. And anyway, so I learned, and I actually worked on the side. I got into med school early, like in my junior year. I did early decision, and I got into NYU. And so I ended up kind of having a relaxed time, sort of, for the last 2 years. And I worked as a web programmer. And at that time, that was really in demand. I was getting paid like a lawyer would get paid, probably like $500 an hour or whatever it was. Yeah, I was making a lot of money for my age. Ended up saving a bunch of money. I also was a TA and that kind of stuff. So I had a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit at that time. But then when I got into med school and I started med school, it was, I don't know, months, and I was about 4 or 5 months into med school when my roommate at the time was working at Goldman, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing, dude? We can make like millions of dollars, and you're sitting here and reading biochemistry on a Sunday." And he had been partying all night the night before. He's like, "We'll go. I know how to raise millions of." This is during the .com boom, right?
So he's seeing it everywhere.
Oh yeah, and I'm like in this apartment on Park Avenue on 36th Street, and literally like just studying all day long, and I don't know, something when he said it to me that way clicked. And I just called my mom and I said, "Listen, I'm not going to go to med school on Monday." She's like, "Why? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm going to try this." I had saved up a little bit of money. He had saved up money too. And we tried a .com. And there were venture capitalists that were dumb enough to give 22-year-olds, a few $1 million to pursue something that was really actually, we basically tried to create Microsoft 365 through using Citrix. So at that time, apps were not web-based. They were mostly like Windows-based, but there was a way to use Citrix to kind of run your apps, on a server. And we had an app store, and we saved your stuff in the cloud, and we were a SaaS company, but none of those words existed. None of those words that I just said to you existed.
You were making it with Blue Ocean. You were trying to build in a category that didn't exist.
Yeah, and so sometimes you have a great idea, and this is obviously will lead into the VC portion of things, but you're just great idea, just really bad timing. And, we built something that people actually use, but there were lots of reasons why we failed, not just because we were early. There wasn't enough broadband penetration. There was a lot of other issues. And then, the dot-com bubble burst and people would not continue to fund us. And so anyway, that was my first taste of building something that I thought was amazing, and then just getting punched in the face and falling down again, right?
But that must have been, so that's probably raising venture money and then failing is probably the most stressful thing a 20-some-year-old can go through.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now all the investors want their money. They're asking you what's going on. And
not even that. I mean, just the tension between founders. Also, because, you end up kind of having disagreements of what should be done. I wanted to just walk away. They didn't, and there was another founder involved, and the dynamics of it is a lot more complicated than that.
How did you get out of that? Because that's
I said, look, here are my shares. Have a nice day. You guys, if you want to continue to do it, but I don't see a light at the end of this tunnel. And so my options at that time was going back to med school or maybe starting something else. And I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And even if I wanted to go back to med school, I had to wait until, matriculating for the next year and that kind of stuff.
So then how did JoonBug start? Because that's the one, you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I wrote the book about it because I learned the most about it, about life and business.
Which is so funny because you were med school, you did a SaaS startup, and then you go into nightlife. And the way you entered nightlife is, eventually there was tech components built out. But at the beginning, it was like a very much like a non-tech business.
I think even from so let me kind of, so at the time I actually moved in with my girlfriend at the dorms. She was going to FIT.
How old are you now?
I must have been 23 or 24 at that point. And she, she was still going to school, and then she worked at a couple of nightclubs on the side to make extra money. And so I would go and pick her up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and then, she'd get paid cash. And then I was looking around and I'm like, I don't understand. These guys operate this entire nightclub or this bar or whatever on paper and pen. It makes absolutely no sense. They had no systems in place. And so also they would, I don't know if you remember this. It's pretty old school to do this. They would print out flyers, and then there would be a person outside the club.
Yeah. I was around for a minute when that happened. How long?
And they would give you a flyer. They would give you like a piece of paper, and it would tell you about the next party that was next week, or the New Year's party, or whatever it is that they were trying to promote at that point. And so I was like, what? 99% of those are on the floor, because people just take it and throw it on the floor. And I'm like, these guys should be emailing people. They need to have systems in place. So it started by us using tech to do an event and seeing if it makes sense.
You weren't doing nightclub promotion, just nightclub promotion. Okay.
No. So I was like, let me test this theory. Initially, we did I said to my girlfriend, look, let's do a Halloween party. I have an idea. We have email addresses. No one was doing Evite. This is a pre-Facebook, pre-camera phone, pre-MySpace, pre-Eventbrite, pre-everything that you know today. None of that existed. Okay. Not even like MailChimp, right? None of that existed. And so I'm like, I'm going to figure out, we're going to do this website for an event. And that was like really, and then you're going to have a code to put it in, and you have to have the code to go in, and we're going to do this. And I had just moved at that point to Sutton Place, which is like near the Queensboro Bridge. And there was a new restaurant that was built under the arches of the bridge that was beautiful. And it was like, it was like an ideal place to do a Halloween party. And so I'm not gonna give the whole book, but we do this event, and in one night I make like 200 grand or something like that, something crazy.
And it was basically digital marketing.
All through digital marketing.
And that was novel.
Yes,
that was
emails. We made a credit card that had a mag stripe on the back of it. People had to come and use that. And I figured out how to do sponsorships, which I had no idea how to do. And then I knew at that point I had something. And so it ended up becoming a lot more than that. So we ended up building the entire full tech stack that most of the nightclubs and bars used. So they would use it internally, and then we became like a media arm for them.
And just to give like an idea of some of like the numbers around the business. So that first event, what kind of money can running an event with a tech stack actually make you as an entrepreneur?
Oh, well, it's mostly profit, because if you sell tickets and then you guarantee a bar and you hit the bar numbers and then you get a piece of the bar. I don't know how it works now. This is like 25 years ago. Sending emails costs nothing. I programmed it myself, right? And so, I don't know, we were selling tickets between $30 and $50, and we had 3,000 or 4,000 people come. So you just do the math.
It's not bad for one night. Yeah. And you can do that at multiple, and you did eventually do it at multiple venues, right? Even some simultaneous.
Right. So we had the tech part of the business, which was more like SaaS and media. So we would sell media. We also built an email list that people would, kind of pay to get on, kind of like a daily candy. I don't know if you remember Daily Candy, but at that time there was a Daily Candy, but now there's like Thrill List and these other ones that kind of came out. We were the precursor to those types of things. And then we built a ticketing system. So if you can imagine, like Ticketmaster was not, selling tickets for a nightclub, which ended up becoming, instead of like thousands of tickets, it's turned into millions of tickets, because EDM really took hold, and venues, like Tao Group and bigger venues started to use this technology, and they wanted to pre-sell tickets because, they were paying a lot to these DJs to come in. And so they wanted to make sure that they had their costs covered. And, you just do the math. You sell millions of tickets and make $2 or $3 on convenience fees. It's money out of thin air.
And you basically built that. So all the tech that people would use now, including payment processing, would you build out your own payment processor?
Yeah, well, our systems, we partnered with payment processors.
Okay, but you'd still get a percentage.
Absolutely.
Because you're the one bringing in the business.
And then we would sell ads. And then we were like, wow, these guys are making so much money on events. And we figured out that New Year's and Halloween are the two biggest money makers of every New Year's. Everyone goes out on New Year's, and people are willing to pay ridiculous prices for like the worst experience of their life. Okay. It's like, just cause like it's Marquee or whatever, whatever new hot spot there is. But it's actually even funny because we figured out that you could do New Year's Eve parties at the worst places you could think of. Like we did like Dave & Buster's in Times Square, right? And we would sell tickets at the highest price you could imagine. And it was really cheap to rent the place out, because like who goes to Dave & Buster's? But what we realized, because we were doing like data analytics, is that there were a lot of people calling us being like, where can we go where we can bring our kids? Because we want to go out and we want to see the ball drop and we want to party, but we want to bring our 12-year-old or 13-year-old kids.
Yeah, we're not going to go to a nightclub and get bottle service.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we're like, wait, these guys will pay $1,000 a ticket for that. So, or $500 a ticket or whatever it was. And so, we figured out a lot of things. We also did a lot of really advanced things like dynamic pricing.
Mm-hmm. And you also collected the list of all the people and then you use that to fill clubs. So if you had this list of a couple,
it was this flywheel.
Yeah,
it was a flywheel, right?
And I remember I read your book a while ago before we moved, and I can't remember the number. Maybe you remember it off the top of your head, but per club on New Year's Eve, the amount of revenue you could do was like some insane that
we were making like $500,000 a venue
per venue, and you could do every venue in New York City.
Well, that's the thing. Scaling that's really hard. Okay.
But there was points when you did.
We did. We were doing like 20, 30 places one night. And it works very well in major metropolitan areas like New York, LA, Miami, those types of things. So the problem is logistically doing a lot of events in one night requires a lot of staffing, requires a lot of organization and a lot of pre-planning. It also is a lot of risk because if you look at COVID, everyone who may have bought out a venue for an event was SOL at that point. So you could spend millions of dollars pre-booking a venue, because that's the way we actually invented that. We would pre-book a venue. So we would go to Marquee, we would go to Steve & Buster's, we would go to this nightclub and say, we want to just basically rent out the place for all of New Year's. Here's $100,000 deposit. How much is it to have an open bar for six hours and food, and we'll bring the DJ and we'll bring this, and and we'd have to guarantee that, and that was also part of our success.
Fine if you have major metropolitan areas and you don't have COVID, it's fine to guarantee that, but then you get in trouble when you don't.
Yeah, but you're almost like reinventing your business every year if you think about it. So you have to really start over again. There's no other than human nature and wanting to go out on New Year's, right? It's not guaranteed that you're going to sell out. It's not guaranteed that venue will stay in business too. There's a lot of risk involved in it. It's not crazy, and I think COVID's an outlier, obviously, but yes, FOMO drives profits. I can tell you that. And what people don't realize is that every ticket you sell to an event like a New Year's Eve event, each ticket holder is a promoter, because they're going to tell their friends, and their friends are going to want to come with them, and they buy tickets. And then, as it gets closer to the event, you start increasing the prices, and then people like freak out.
You didn't raise for this.
No, I did it literally. I didn't do it in my dorm room. I did it in her dorm room. I was in her dorm room, like typing and coding this thing, right? So yeah, we really did it on a shoestring budget. Nothing. I didn't even have I had no money at that point because I lost most of my money
with the company.
Because I put like $100,000 or $150,000 of my own money that I had saved up into the other business. That's what part of why I moved in with her.
So when did you choose to sell it? What was the reason?
So at that point, I had started another company.
This was Easy Texting?
Easy Texting. So we realized that we needed, in 2004-ish, 5-ish, we realized that texting was becoming, really prevalent with BlackBerries and that kind of thing. And email was starting to become less effective.
And you're seeing this from the data in JoonBug.
Absolutely, because we were data first, right? And that's pretty normal now, but I think it was pretty advanced in 2004, 2005 to look at your data and try and get insights from it. I don't think there were a lot of people who were doing that, right? Even big tech companies weren't really even doing that. But I don't know. We saw that, and I was thinking of how can we cut through the clutter, because at that point there was, you were getting an email from the nightclub, you were getting one from the DJ, you were getting one from the doorman, you were getting one from their grandmother, you were getting one from everyone, right? And so we were just another email, and the efficacy of it was going down. So I'm like, oh, we need to start, we have everyone's phone numbers, let's start texting them. Easier said than done. I thought that there would be a solution like MailChimp out there that by that time MailChimp was and Constant Contact and all these other kind of ESPs, email service providers were out there, and they were doing really well because everyone was building their email list, but there was no solution for texting, which was shocking, actually. And so I was like, okay, we need to figure this out. And then I figured it out. It took like 6 months and I figured it out. And because it's not, if you think about it, texting goes through the phone systems. It's not the internet. It's different.
So then there's the higher costs. There's
higher costs. It's a closed system. It's not the same. A text message is actually really considered a phone call. It's not data. It's a little bit weird and it's too much for this podcast to go into it. But anyway, long story short, I built it, sent out the first text, and literally I had every nightclub owner, promoter, DJ, everyone call me and be like, how the hell did you just do that? Right. And I was like, light bulb moment.
Which is wild because even in 2024, outside of like Twilio, still not a lot of companies focus on texting. It's still email.
There are a few big ones that are like Shopify integrated that do this interesting thing where if you go to their text message list, they give you a coupon, and then obviously texting someone is a lot more effective than
right. But even if there's companies that offer it, I get less text than I get emails, is my point.
Yes, you do, because it's actually highly regulated now. And so they never wanted it to become like, you get like millions of text spam. And so actually companies like Easy Texting that started it, we would make sure that our customers were in compliance and they're only sending to opt-in customers and that kind of thing. And we gave you tools that would help you build your list in a compliant way as well.
And this is before the government had regulation, because you were ahead of the curve. Like you were.
Yeah. Yes. We can do a whole podcast on regulations and stuff like that. We got slapped with a bunch of lawsuits that we got pulled into as well. And I learned a lot from that. Learned all about, probably it's like one of those things that if you knew that you had to go through that, maybe you would have never started it in the first place, but it doesn't matter. So anyway, the light bulb moment went off and I was like, this could be MailChimp for text messaging. And so I didn't hesitate. I created that and I kind of ran both companies for a year until Easy Texting really started to become significant at that point. And I just really saw the opportunity with Easy Texting being a lot bigger than what I had already done the previous 10 years with JoonBug. And I was also ready for something new. The entrepreneur in me was ready for something new. This was the shiny new object. There was a competitor that was nipping at our heels all the time.
With JoonBug?
Yeah, with JoonBug, that was trying to do what we were doing. And I just called him and I said, listen, today's your lucky day. We had already kind of like, we were the established company. I said, look, if you can figure out how to kind of make this acquisition work, I'm willing to do it. And so that ended up happening. And then I spent another 8 years or so building Easy Texting. It also kind of coincided with what I wanted personally, because there was a lot of, it's not easy to kind of want to get married and have kids and stuff and be in that type of business, even if you're just doing the tech for them, let's just say.
Like it's, the whole business is like at odds with like a marriage and a stable family.
Absolutely. And so, what's really funny is that the entire time I was always in long-term relationships. So it wasn't like I was going out and partying. Yeah. Probably why I could stay in the business and not kind of get caught up in it.
A big shout out to HubSpot and the HubSpot Podcast Network for sponsoring Success Story. If you enjoy Success Story, you're going to enjoy a ton of podcasts brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, including Hustle and Flowchart, hosted by Joey Fier. The Hustle and Flowchart podcast with Joey is all about how to build a business so it gives you the freedom and fuel for your life. You're going to join Joey as he discusses systems, mindset tweaks, reframes, and strategies for entrepreneurs and really anyone to enjoy the process of being in business and having fun. everyone. This isn't for entrepreneurs looking to build a billion-dollar business. It's for somebody who wants to build a lifestyle, somebody who is looking to build systems that work. Listen to Hustle and Flowchart wherever you get your podcasts. But it's very. I know that business is tough. I was speaking to Scott Harrison from Charity Watch.
Yeah, I know him.
And as he was telling me his story, I'm like, for sure he knows Shane.
Yeah. I know him. He realized it earlier on and understood that real purpose came through, doing something significant. And by the way, he was like at the top of his game when
I have no doubt. He said he left this beautiful condo with this grand piano in his penthouse and he just effed off and he just never looked back.
Yeah, good for him. Yeah. And charity war is big.
They just raised over $1 billion. Just last Thursday, they hit the $1 billion mark.
How much more fulfilling is that?
Probably a lot.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so you get it. This is not going to be the business you're going to build for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yeah, and I also think that part of a lot of people get caught up conflating themselves with their business. They almost see themselves in their business as one. I was very lucky that I never had that mentality. The business for me was always an ends to a means, and to a degree, I have to like what I'm doing, but you tend to like things that are successful, right? So, I never, once I sold JoonBug, it was turn that page, have a nice day. That's in the past, right? I don't even really think about it ever. It was never me, right? It was something I did, but it wasn't me.
But that's a very healthy attitude.
Yeah.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs should probably have that attitude.
It's easier said than done. And when you're in it and you're running it, it's hard not to remove yourself out of it. It's conflicting because you want, as a VC, you want a founder that is all in, right? But you can be all in and still be detached from the outcome of what's going on. And that's either something that's innately in you, or you have to work to kind of make yourself aware of that.
That will, your mental health is going to be much better if you adopt that attitude versus the opposite, which I think that less founders act like you acted. I think more founders just their whole identity is the business.
It could be a detriment too, because if you don't sell at the right time, you're also screwed. You could have sold and you could have done really well, and you hold on too long and you burn yourself out, or you hold on and the market turns and what you were doing is no longer relevant, right?
Did you raise for EasyText?
I did not. I took all the majority of the money that I got from the sale and I pumped it into EasyTexting.
And then so that would be the third business. So JoonBug considered a success. EasyTexting, how far did you take that?
So I took that for another 8 years, and then it did very well. We grew it. It was...
Have you been public about numbers or no?
I can't say the actual number, but we were close to around 18 million in ARR at the time that we sold. But so, you can kind of backtrack numbers if you wanted to. But what was interesting is that we were doing that with a team of 20-something people.
That's good revenue per head.
And, we were serving tens of thousands of customers. We were early to the kind of game, so we had a first mover advantage. And what was interesting is that I wasn't even kind of looking to sell. A strategic approached me that wasn't doing texting, they were doing calling.
This is perfect.
And so, yeah. And then it's funny, that process taught me how to think about my business, because all I knew before that.
How did you say that? This is your third business in. This is almost 25 years of building your business. Why do you say that this moment is when you thought about?
Because I think I thought I knew, because it was the first sale was a very friendly sale. It was an acquirer who knew my business inside out because they were doing the same exact thing. And so there weren't many questions around what I was doing. It was kind of like a handshake deal. This was a little bit more different. They were asking me questions, and I'm like, wow, I I don't know. I never really thought of my LTV, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. We never thought about like what our cost of acquisition is. I just know I make a shit ton of money, right? And so what was very interesting also is that at that time, they didn't really know what to do with us because I ran a very profitable business, which was weird for SaaS companies at the time.
It was weird to be profitable.
Absolutely. But I was looking at it as a career, not like something that I'm building to sell. So I was like, I want to make something where I make a good living off of. And there are SaaS companies that do that, right? Like 37 Signals and other companies where they make millions of dollars a year and they have a great product and they have like customers and they're never going to build, they're never going to sell.
But I actually think that, again, like all the things that you did, these are things that I think are just best practice for entrepreneurs. Like I don't think most entrepreneurs should be building a company that's not profitable, that you're just looking for the next round and you're just burning through venture money and you're stressed out. And I was actually looking at old posts, funny enough, just last night, like old posts that I put out. And I'd done this like little comment on a tweet this guy put out, and I can't remember the whole story. But basically the tweet was, I sold my company for $237 million and I didn't get anything from it. Yeah. And it was a venture backed and he was diluted or whatever happened and he never took money out and he paid himself like this below average salary. And by the time that he raised whatever series he was at, I don't know how it happened. Maybe they had to do a down round. I don't know what happened. But basically he sold his company for $237 million and walked away with zero money.
I bet you if you had a company that you owned by yourself that made $5 million a year and you sold that company, you would make as much as if you sold your venture-backed company for $150 million. The math probably works about the same.
I bet you're right, actually.
Right? So who's the better founder?
I'll tell you who gets the headlines. But
the guy with the $150 million gets the headlines, and people actually give a shit about him because he's VC backed. But no one gave a shit about me because like I wasn't VC backed and no one cared. No one cared to look. Yeah. But like maybe that was part of my success is that I went under the radar, right? Is like maybe if people knew how much money I was really making, they would have competitors.
Like a $5 million, $10 million in pure profit, I think that's fucking phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
I mean, try doing that right now. It's impossible. You have to have a lot of things work out for you to make that kind of money, right? A lot of hard work, a lot of luck, probably more luck than hard work.
Right time, right place, right market, right product.
Absolutely. And you have to be in the right mindset and the right, experience level to do something like that.
And I also think that many people don't need as much money as they actually think they need.
No.
To actually live like an insanely good life.
No, they absolutely don't. They absolutely don't. And I lived a great life without a lot of money for a long time.
So Easy Texting, you went through a strategic. They approached you.
They approached me. They were actually a customer of ours. And then I learned a lot about my business through that process. Exited, had coincided with getting married and also having my first child.
That was a busy year.
Yeah, I was like within the first 2 years, let's just say, of doing that. I stayed on for like a year. And, I realized it wasn't going to, like it wasn't my business anymore. And there was other, like this happens to everyone. But I kind of made a conscious decision at that point, not just like what you said, when is enough, right? And so I was a crazy workaholic. I would work all the time. I mean, I don't even know why my in-laws let me marry my wife because I would not, like, I was never there present. Like I was on my BlackBerry all the time. I remember I spent one New Year's, my poor wife, at that time, she was my girlfriend. We were in Miami. We went to dinner. At 10 o'clock, I had to leave because of a work emergency. I went to the basement of the Delano at that time, worked on the computers because they had a office computer system, lab. And I left at like 3 a.m, and I went and picked her up. And that was like my life. It was really like that all the time. I was never present on anything. I was only about the business mostly, which I think, coincides with how successful your business is. And there's nothing wrong with that in a season of your life that you may need to do that in order to get to a level of success that you may want personally, right? But anyway, I realized I wanted to be a present father. And I was like, what is this all for if you don't get to enjoy it a little bit? And so we moved to Miami about 10 years ago from New York City. I was always in New York City. So like that hustle came from being in New York City. Also, the hustle came from trying to get into med school too. Like,
you never saw founder mode for like 25 years, basically.
Yeah. And by the way, I still have that in me. So now the founder mode comes into running investments, which I think I do differently than a lot of other investors.
I want to unpack that, because even now I find you busy. Like you're still very busy for somebody who is like quote unquote retired.
Yeah,
you're very busy.
I wish that people think some of my friends and family think I'm retired, but I'm not. I really work all the time.
I know you work all the time.
Yeah. I work all the time because there's just so much exciting stuff happening.
But it's interesting because I don't think I know too many other people, because do you consider yourself like a professional investor, I guess, at this point? And I'll tell you why I say that, because the people that I know a lot of people that have exited companies and they all invest, obviously, but they don't spend as much time investing as you do.
No. So, yes, so I made it my mission. I realized afterwards that I didn't want to do a startup. And I'm like, I need to learn how to not suck at investing, at least. Let's just put it that way.
Because the one thing that it's the ego. When you sell a company, you think you know what you're doing. And then for some reason, people think that just because they can build a company, they can invest.
It's actually diametrically opposed sometimes. Being a good investor and being a good founder are not necessarily, some of the attributes are okay to have, but other attributes actually make you a worse investor. Because founders tend to want to do stuff to fix things if they see something wrong, and they think they can outsmart everyone, and they think they can maneuver. The problem with investing is that if you do too much, you actually end up screwing yourself over a lot of times. If you sell and buy and try and time things and do things like...
If you try and control.
Yes. You just have to, so people ask me like, so what is it that you really do now? My job is to consistently make good decisions. And that's very hard. It's very hard. It's very exhausting, just to be honest, because, I doubt myself all the time. How do you know the decision you're making is a good decision? You don't know until later on and you see the results of it, right? And sometimes what's even crazier is that the short-term outcome of your decision may be bad, but the long-term outcome might be amazing, right? Or the reverse. The short-term is like, you're like, I'm the smartest guy in the world. And then like 2 years later, you're like, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking, right? So decision-making is a skill that no one teaches you. You're not taught it, like, were you taught in school?
No, of course not. Dude, in your story and in my story, the things that I learned in school were no longer applicable, like in the first 2 days of what I did.
Absolutely. So like, how do you learn how to make a good decision?
You don't know. You did by making decisions and by screwing up.
Yeah, but you know what? Even when you do that, people don't tend to learn, because how many people do you know sit down and be like, oh, let me review that really bad decision I did. And what were the problems with it? And how did I mess this up? Do you know what people do that?
No, because nobody wants to deal with it.
No, but I actually do that. I do that. I do a decision review every quarter, and I keep a journal, and in my journal, it's like kind of like a daily journal of like what I did that would start when I do like like one or two things I was grateful for. And then if I made any major decisions that day, I usually type it out. And then
so not just in regards to investing.
No, because it's you're either like constantly making good decisions and thinking about things in a rigorous way, or you're not. And that can permeate, like, why wouldn't I want to do that for my children or my personal life or my health or my this or the other thing, right? So like, I think it's just an essential skill to have a good life, not just a business.
Did you pick that up while you were actually building, or was that more after?
No, actually, I learned this through a couple of people I was following, but the person who talks about this the most that I like, that's the most clear about it, is Shane Parrish. He's in the Knowledge Project. He actually has a course called Decisions, but I've taken that course, and I thought I was a good decision maker prior to that, and then I was like, holy shit, like I just learned something that I never thought of before. It's very difficult to take major decisions through a process. And, most people, most investors or bigger investors take it through investment committee and this kind of stuff. And you get everyone's feedback and even that can be not the best approach either.
Walk me through it. Like, what's the decision-making process that you'd make on anything from like personal health to investment to like, what's the framework?
So the frameworks are, are they consequential and inconsequential? Because, if it's reversible, this is kind of like what goes in Shane's, I never really thought of it methodically until I took his course. So like, if it's reversible, then like, I don't know, just make the decision. And if it's not, but if it's consequential and irreversible, you want to kind of get information from the most pertinent people that have first-hand knowledge of this, not second-hand knowledge of it, whatever it may be. Like if you're making a health decision or, that kind of stuff. And then at some point, having too much information actually hinders your decision-making process. You have to also kind of come to a conclusion after of when you have enough information to make a decision. Then, you do things like probability scores of how certain you are of certain things. And then you have to execute on the decision. And when it comes to investing, you have to think of sizing. So sometimes so a problem that I've had personally is that I've made some really freaking amazing investments, but then I just didn't put in enough money in the investment. I was really convicted, but I didn't size it correctly. Right? And the reverse can happen too, is like, you make a decision, you size too big, and then you make a really big mistake and you're out of the game. That's the other thing, is that it's kind of like poker, right? Like you don't want to make a decision where you have one hand that takes you out of the game and then you can't play anymore, right? So there's a lot of that going on. You have to, there's a lot of different methodologies of making a good decision.
But even that, even like a little bit of thought about it, I think is better than what most people do.
Absolutely. Blindly just thinking about things. There are more things that you can do. But I could spend the entire podcast telling you, but that's, there are books on this. There are people who are experts on this. I wish I had done this earlier, right? Not that I was a bad decision maker particularly, but the better decision maker you are, the better you tend to do.
Now, I mean, so I asked you if you consider yourself a professional investor, but at the very minimum, you are a professional decision maker. And that's what I think, but everybody is. Yes. I think that, well, actually, it's all relative. I was going to say, because there's more capital, there's more stakes, but it doesn't really matter, because at any level, it's all relative, right? Like you could be putting in like $5,000 into a company, and if you lose it all, that's still $5,000 gone. And if you're only making $70,000 a year or whatever, that's significant to you. So it doesn't really make a difference.
So being a good investor equates to being a good decision maker, and also being able to remove your emotions from the investment. It's very hard to do. I am not particularly good at it, but I'm seasoned and I'm hardened
So you sold Easy Texting.
Yes.
You started investing.
I started investing. I made a lot of mistakes.
Okay. So, but even like the thought process, because again, I do see you being more active than a lot of the people that I know. A lot of people I know who sold a company, they only invest in the thing that they know.
Yes,
and
I'm all across the board.
Or real estate. That's like the only, like you could be like a SaaS founder and you just do like early stage prop tech, SaaS, and then plus real estate or yeah. But you do everything.
I do because
and you have to talk about the stuff that you put money into.
Oh yeah. So I'll tell you, my strategy is very different now than it was before.
When you started?
Yeah. But I think that being able to control, if you look at the best investors like a Buffett or those guys, right? They're all slightly on the spectrum, and so they don't experience emotion the same way that, I don't know, quote unquote normal people do, right? Or you and I do, or so they could see like a huge loss on their account and not flinch because they're so certain about what they just did, and they're just like, I'm willing to be wrong for a long time until I'm right.
Yeah, but for most people, you have a heart attack.
Yeah, you go in and you see your account down 30%, 40%, 50%, you're gonna have a heart attack, and you're gonna make a bad decision. Okay, and so that's an acquired skill, and sometimes it's even when you acquire the skill, like even during COVID, like I was on the verge of making some really bad decisions that I'm thankful that I didn't make, but I was this close, like I'm not immune to it, right? To making emotional decisions. And so, that's a practice. It's just like working out, right? Like the more you practice it, or, yoga or whatever it is, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And, you can start small. I found, a few people who I respected. I talk to them all the time. It's very hard to find those people in whatever you're looking for. Like for me, it was for investments. For other people, it could be in health. I know you and Gary are tight.
Yeah.
Now, right? And I know
he has his own. He's built a massive social media business with Valeria. So he's one of the guys that I look to for that. But there's not many people that are killing it. Like the 0.001% is for a reason, right?
Yeah. So it's worth your time and effort to try and find those people that you want to surround yourself in. That's probably the 90% of the game. And the amount that I learned from those people, and now I'm adding value to them because I learned their techniques, I learned from them, and now I'm like contributing, right? And so I think that's an essential. You really want to find those people that are experts in what you're trying to do, and put yourself around them, and put yourself into scenarios that give you high probability of meeting those people in situations. So now my investment thesis is very different than before.
What was it I don't even think you told me.
I think I was trying to do a little bit of what you said. I know I did real estate and I did SaaS and things I knew initially. But then, when I put myself around other investors that were really smart, they were opening up whole new worlds for me and showing me biotech and showing me, deep tech and showing me CPG, like we did at Athletic Greens, for example, one of the investments that I did with one of my friends that's an amazing investor as well. And then looking at late stage businesses, like we did Pacific Park at the Santa Monica Pier, which we bought that business, which is it's the #1 tourist destination in Los Angeles.
I know. So you literally bought the Santa Monica Pier.
We didn't buy the pier itself. You can't own the pier, right?
It sounds cool.
It sounds cool. We bought the business of the pier, so it's a little bit different. But there's a real estate component to it. But I think right now my tech.
By the way, are those some of your biggest ones? So Athletic Greens.
So I think Athletic Greens, the Pure is one of the biggest deals I've ever been involved with. I did a company called Figure AI recently, which is a humanoid robot that Brett Adcox founded. I don't think I knew you when I first invested. We invested 2 years ago. It was a unique time because the markets were doing really poorly at that time. It was 2022, I think. And, you know, tech was down a lot. Inflation was raging, and Brett comes out and he's like, I want to build a humanoid robot. And all he had was a few guys that he had hired from Boston Dynamics, a sample of a hand of a robot, and a bunch of, I don't know, like computerized prototypes.
But he had a track record, though.
He had a track record, and he was putting in 20 million of his own money. So that's the thing. When you make decisions, you have to also kind of take into, because if you just look at it at the face of it, most 99.9% of people would never even consider it, because it's like, he's going to build a human robot that whatever, right? Like,
but when you put your money where your mouth is, as a founder,
and going into details matter, right? So like those things matter. You know, he had a track record. He's had 2 exits. He took Archer Aviation public, so he had a lot of hardware experience and scaling hardware. He was putting his money where his mouth was. He had gone pretty far, even with very little money, of actually making a functional hand, which is the hardest part of a robot mostly. And so when I first did that investment, most people thought I was batshit crazy, because, you know, first of all, the markets were in turmoil at that time. So it's very hard under fear to make investments.
But that's where the removing your emotion piece.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like whether it's in the public markets or the private markets it's irrelevant, right? People get disgusted and they don't want to look, right? They don't want to look because they see their account down, right? And they're like, oh yeah, now I'm going to make an investment and like take even more money out of there.
But the thing is, those two things are completely separate from each other.
Yet it is, logically speaking,
but it's
very hard to separate it out. And so anyway, as luck would have it, which I think 90% of all this is luck, obviously, Brett was successful. He made a prototype that actually works. It's actually deployed on Amazon and BMW right now. It's probably him and Optimus from Tesla are probably the incumbents in the field, where they have a real viable product that can actually replace human labor. And if you think about it, human labor, physical labor, is a $3 trillion TAM. Like everything, like it's all the work that no one really wants to do, right? Like this is, you know, no one wants to go and pick and pack in a warehouse and go down aisles and pull things from boxes and, you know, take a piece of sheet metal and keep putting it into a press 1,000 times a day. Which is where he's starting, which I think is the right thing. And also in a warehouse, you know, a robot's in a controlled environment, so the safety issues are kind of much more manageable.
They're mitigated a little.
Yeah, they're much more manageable. It's also talking to a computer that's giving it directions, like a warehouse management system, versus, you know, me, you know, robot being in my house and I'm saying, wash the dishes, right? It's a little bit different.
It's almost like, well, robots exist in car manufacturing already.
They do,
but this is
certain parts of
it. So this is just like almost finishing or more parts of the factory is now going to.
So Tesla, I think, you know, their idea is that the entire process will be done by a robot, and as a practical matter, all the other robots that work on anything are, you know, the environment is retrofitted for the robot so that the robot can work correctly in that environment. But the world is meant to interface with humans. It's meant to interface with hands, feet, you know, stabilize, like a human, like even an iPhone, if you go and actually look at how it's made, a lot of it's done by hand. You can't even imagine, right? It's done on a huge scale in China, but a lot of the pieces are being done by hand. And so if you can really truly replace that, the opportunity is huge. It's almost like as big as cars were when cars were invented, right? The opportunity is huge. in the entire physical labor.
So it's funny whenever an entrepreneur is like TAM, like total addressable market, and they say some ridiculous, outlandish number, and you're like, well, if I just captured like 1% of TAM or whatever, then company will be successful. But this is
really truly a giant TAM. I mean, like the payroll first of all, Amazon and all these places, they can't even get enough workers. There's not enough workers that want to do this, so they have to constantly raise the price of what they're willing to pay. I mean, the port workers, you just saw what happened. It was just happened.
The strike, the huge strike.
It got resolved, but they're getting paid like $65 an hour now.
That's significant. That's huge.
Yeah. So like, why wouldn't you replace that person with a robot if you could? It makes no sense. Why do you need a person to like move cargo from one side of the port to the other? And like, there's a lot of issues with that because there's safety issues. Like if a piece of cargo falls on a robot, no one cares.
But if that injures a person, that's millions of dollars, and
the productivity gains, the things that come with it. And so anyway, just recently they raised $650 million from like Microsoft and OpenAI, and Jeff Bezos put $100 million in. So, I look smart.
And then now,
and then let's see what happens in 2 years. Now, right? Like it could be a zero, right?
When you look at companies like that, where it's because there's different types of companies you can invest in. You can invest in a company that's building almost like a copycat product of what already exists, and for a fact it's going to get snatched up the second they get big enough.
Absolutely.
But when you look at a company like this, like what's the end game? Because the exit horizon or the ability for you to take cash out could be 15 years from now.
It could. It's more likely a 5 to 10 year one.
And like IPO?
Yeah, I think for this particular one, but I think that I do both. Just my style is I outsize my investments in things where I think can give me outsized returns, right? And so when you invest in a company like that, you're looking to get like 100x on your money, right? And, you have to size appropriately, and it's high risk, high reward. But the other one that's a copycat, you can maybe 2 or 3x your money in like 4 or 5 years possibly. And it's like I'll go out and make a really big investment in real estate because I know the likelihood of that piece of real estate going to zero is very low.
Plus you have the land as collateral too.
And so you have to kind of, you have to have a methodology of how you're looking at stuff. It's not easy for me to tell you my methodology because it's a little bit unconventional. I'm not as structured as like let's say a Blackstone is or something like that. The only person I have to answer to is myself, and not like, I have people who invest alongside me and I show stuff to as well, but I'm not like a fund manager, for example, or something like that, right? So it's a little bit different. I can take risks and do things that a lot of other people can't because it's my own money.
It's your own money. It's your own money. But so even if you were just going to like, I know you said your framework's a little bit difficult, but if you looked at, so between cash flowing businesses like private equity or funds or real estate or early stage or late stage venture capital, do you have like a mix that you aim for, like a loose mix?
Yeah. So I have personally the most allocated to public equities because I think that it's very hard to replicate U.S. equities and the amount of value creation that is done there. Probably for me.
Is that through a fund or just through picking?
No, I do it.
Yeah, good.
I do it. I'm in like one hedge fund, but that's because I know the person very well. But I've done, like I do funds for early stage stuff like crypto and like biotech where I don't see like, and I'm not an expert in the field, so I tend to pick managers that are really good at that. But I like to do individual deals, and I'm probably more than normal in venture than a lot of people are. And I would probably say that my venture and my real estate and my private equity are probably equal onto that thing. I also have a barbell strategy now, right? So the way I'm thinking about things is I'm trying to invest in deep tech like quantum, AI, robotics. I did a company called Lumafield recently that I invested in a company called Lumafield recently that has a CAT scan machine that can look at any object and then find the defects in it through AI. So even like a Nike sneaker, it can, but they do a lot of electronics too. So like you could put a battery in there and then they could figure out the defects without having to take it apart. I did a company called Sandbox. I invested in a company called Sandbox AQ, which is the leading quantum cybersecurity company in the world. It actually spun out of Google. So I did an investment in that 2 years ago, and people thought we were crazy, like Figure AI too, because like there was no ChatGPT at that time, right? Like
this was bleeding edge.
Yeah. It's Eric Schmidt. It's and quantum and this and the other thing, and people really didn't understand what it did, and it was a little early for its time because you're protecting against a quantum computer that doesn't exist yet, right? Just in case someone does it, right? So anyway, so now that business has done very, very, very well. It has a lot of government contracts, and they just got a contract with the Air Force and this type of stuff. So doing follow-ons on those, or I'm trying to find businesses where I don't have a good enough imagination to think about how AI or deep tech or quantum can really disrupt that company.
And you're looking for businesses that you do not have the understanding of. Explain.
I don't have the imagination, a good enough imagination to contemplate how AI or deep tech can disrupt that company and put them out of business.
I understand. Okay.
And so I'm not doing a lot of SaaS at all because I think that eventually computers will be coding. They're coding mostly right now, and it's going a lot faster than people think. I was able to go to SpaceX and get a tour of SpaceX last week. Yeah. And so, I really saw firsthand how crazy things are going to get. And I see the magic that's happening there. I saw them actually putting together the components of the rockets. I saw how they're using AI. I actually touched a Starlink satellite, which was amazing. I went on the launch pad.
Very cool.
I drove a Plaid X at 165 miles an hour down where the shuttle used to land. Anyway, I digress. But that part of that was like, holy shit, they're really going to get to Mars because I saw it. I saw what was happening there. And I know that they're going to get to a place where they're going to do multiple launches a day. And Boeing can never do what they do.
So you see the tech, you see what people are capable of.
No, it's just indescribable. I wasn't able to take pictures, so I wish I was, but I understand why. But like, it's so much further along than you can imagine. It's just hard to human brains are not meant to understand change this rapidly, but it's happening. And so I think that with the robots and with AI and those types of things, a lot of things, and this might sound psycho to a lot of people because it might sound like an exaggeration, but I personally, my opinion is not like, oh, in 10 years things are going to be changing. I think in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you're going to see some really crazy changes of how rapidly things are going to become
I have to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's podcast, LinkedIn. Now, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. And did you know that in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites? So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. What really amazed me was how quickly I found qualified candidates on LinkedIn. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's like hiring professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. As small business owners, we're always juggling multiple responsibilities. LinkedIn understands this and constantly finds ways to make the hiring process easier. They've even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even quicker. And it's really no wonder why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. I can't recommend it enough for finding top-notch professionals who could take your business to the next level. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/excellence. That's linkedin.com/excellence to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So when things change that quickly and you're investing in them, like there's a really good chance you're going to screw it up or miss it or pick the wrong thing. So when you look at something like a quantum computing company that is protecting against malicious quantum computing attacks that have not, quantum computers are not even like commercially available yet.
Yes.
Like, who do you talk to make sure the founder is not full of shit? How do you go for like?
So for me, I'm lucky that there were a lot of really big, but this doesn't work all the time because like Theranos is a good example of this. But typically I read to the degree that other investors have investment memos or experts in the field that I can talk to. That's leveraging your network, right? So a lot of the deal flow that I get is from other fund guys that I've given stuff to, or I've personally gone into their fund just so I could see their deal flow, right? And get to pick their brain and talk to them. That's worth every penny if you think about it, right? The smartest guys, have been in this for a long time, run their own funds. You put a little bit, or you could put a lot, and get to talk to these people.
Find a way to get around those tables.
Exactly. And so to that degree, I have a degree in computer science. So to the degree that I can diligence things, I'm pretty technical. So I'm kind of unique in that way. So I leverage that, right? Like, by the way, like if someone tells you they understand quantum, it means that they don't understand quantum. So that's the number one rule in quantum. It's like, so like, I don't understand it, but I have enough interest in it and enough background to get the concepts on a high level.
And that's, I think, probably one of the most important lessons. Like, there has to be some data point or some person or something that allows you to understand it, just so you're not ignorant going into it. So you're not just dumb money going into it.
Yeah. So, but also if you think about it, you're also 90% of the time betting on the horse. So Jack Hittery, who's the CEO, is literally considered to be the foremost expert on quantum. He wrote the textbook on quantum computing that's taught. And Eric Schmidt was the CEO and chairman of Google for 12 years. So like, what better horse can I bet on, right? Just like how people bet on Elon, right? It's the same concept there. Yes, the tech is important and everything like that's important, but I would argue to you, like in those cases, 90% of it is who you're betting on, right? Who you're betting on, not just what you're betting on. So, so let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, right? What can't be, disrupted by all this stuff that's happening, right? Santa Monica Pier. People are going to still be going on the weekends, they're going to be
hospitality, leisure.
Yeah. Experiences, although some people can argue that, you can virtually do some of these things. And that might get replaced by virtual reality, but
not yet. I mean, it could be, but not yet. And there's also, if you have to think about like can a robot replace a person in a warehouse tomorrow? Yes. But if you were going to talk about replacing a tourist destination, you have to replace like the smells and the feeling of the wind on your face and the taste of the hot dog or the pretzel you go eat. Like that's a...
I can argue that Neuralink will do that for you because it'll go into your brain.
But the precursor technology is not already there, right? The precursor, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But when that happens, so it's like, it depends on like what, are you investing in the technology that's directly applicable, or are you investing in the technology that's going to create another category or another industry?
I think for those things, those are a little bit, you're going to have regulation issues also. Regulatory issues. So the things that could stop this and stop, AI from advancing is government intervention, regulation. One of the robots accidentally kills someone, shoots someone, gets hijacked through cybersecurity. There's a lot of scenarios that you can come up with that can really kind of put us back as well. So you can't have all your eggs in one basket thinking that only the things in the future. But like, again, I'm looking at a hemorrhoid cream that's like trying to disrupt Preparation H. It's been the incumbent for like 50, 70 years.
What was the one that you sent me? I didn't look at it yet. You just sent me one like last week or this week.
I think it was something for creators. It was a creator. I see a lot of things. So the one thing the one thing I haven't done much of is anything that's like social media related. It's just way too difficult and competitive, I think, for me to...
A lot of people that build in this space.
Yes, it's too hard to know the winners of that.
That's so interesting because I think that it's almost so if you look at investing in blue ocean versus red ocean, well, red ocean, there's a market for sure. Blue ocean, with the things that you're talking about, the market should be created in the future, but it's not like really here yet.
No.
But you feel more comfortable doing that because it's just less crowded.
I think I'm doing that on that barbell stretch. The other thing where I think they can't be disrupted, it's red ocean, like,
Yeah, the
hemorrhoid cream, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, no one's done, like Manscaped, for example, is a big brand and they do a lot of money, and they took what a lot of people wouldn't talk about, men's grooming, and made it into a hip, cool brand, and they make a lot of money doing it. And no one's done that in that space. Or there's the female hygiene space. So I invested in a company called Ant Flow, which is doing that. So I think a lot of it is really kind of thinking deeply about things, and also who you're investing in.
Yeah, it's the person.
Because they're going to eventually, just like I did, they're going to eventually hit these roadblocks that everybody eventually gets to, and you have to feel comfortable that person has the wits in them to figure it out. However they do it, they have to be able to figure it out, or pivot, or do whatever it is that needs to be done to continue on. And that's really what the best you can hope for.
What was the biggest loss that you would be willing to talk about? The biggest failure?
Yeah. Oh, so many of them. It's hard to
pick one.
Well, I mean, my first one was the biggest failure, the Offix, which I told you about when I did.
Oh, I meant investing, but yeah.
Oh yeah, investing. Oh man, I can. If you we have another hour, I can tell you about all of them. Probably more. We'd probably need a day than an hour. Probably the one that kind of, there was a company called Convoy, which was kind of doing what Uber Freight does, but it did it first. We were the early. I was an early investor in that company, and then a few years later, it got like a $3 billion valuation. We had an offer to sell. We didn't. We were like, this is going to be the next thing, and then COVID came in, and
oh my God,
zero.
Are you serious?
Complete zero. Yeah, shut down this past year. Yeah. A lot. No, we got zero. They had venture debt. The venture debt guys took it over. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought I was maybe going to retire on that. Maybe that's not going to happen anymore.
Well, maybe it's one of the ones that you're in now.
Yeah, maybe. You know, you can only listen. I've learned one thing: don't ever count your chickens, because it doesn't. You know, even to the last minute. I actually, in the public markets, I had made, not even a year ago, I thought that Moderna was a good investment, and I've gotten really crushed on that investment.
So you've had
60% down, something like that.
Shit.
On that investment.
I haven't been watching it.
Yeah, I was wrong. Man, well, I'm wrong until now. It might be right later, and things might change.
But that's the thing, you're removing the emotion out of it, because if you sold when it was down 60%.
I haven't sold, but you know, so that's another one I did. It's interesting. So, you know, real estate, I ended up selling a lot of the real estate that I owned in Miami. I bought when I first moved, because there were no tech people here in Miami. It was a lot of real estate people. So I just did what everyone else did, but it turned out just to be a good thing to do, because COVID pulled everything forward. So I was of the mindset, when New York and LA people came here and started paying ridiculous prices for, I don't do multifamily or houses. I do commercial real estate, like shopping centers and industrial and that kind of stuff. And so I sold a lot of it into this market that was like 2 years ago, right after COVID was like kind of dying down. Market rates were still low. People were paying insane prices for what I had paid, you know, because no one was looking at Miami 10 years ago, really.
No, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's changed. And I've only been here 4 years, 3.5 years, whatever.
But the few things that I chose to keep, and I'm like, oh, this is going to become like a triple from where it is now. I was wrong. It's not doing bad. Let's just put it that way. But I could have done much better if I sold it at that time. And I actually, it's people tell you that you can't lose on real estate. I've lost plenty on real estate. Like, I bought my apartment in New York City in 2013. And it turned out that I bought it at the exact high that you could possibly buy it. I held on to it for 10 years and never recovered back to the price that I paid for it. I luckily sold it right after COVID, when interest rates were still, and then the market for New York got hot again. And I sold it losing 25% on that.
After 10 years?
After 10 years.
It depends on the market that you invest in, I think. Like
people would tell you New York City, best area in New York City, Chelsea.
I know Chelsea, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
were you like looking at the Empire State Building? Was it like
literally?
Yeah.
It was a penthouse.
I think I know some of the, Gina's sister was living in Chelsea. I can't remember the name of the building, but she was looking right at the Empire. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was a nice building. And rents are really good if you rented it out. She was paying, I think like $7 or $8 grand a month just for something.
Yes, the rents are insane, but the problem is that, you know, when you have an apartment that's 10 years old, the upkeep of it is very high, and so your rents don't cover that, because you got to replace all of everything inside of it. So whoever tells you real estate is passive is absolutely lying to you, right? These YouTubers that tell you this is a passive, and you know, wait until you get a call at 4 a.m. that there's a flood in your thing, and you have to find someone to fix it, and then that caused 10 other secondary and tertiary problems for you.
How do you keep track of all of your stuff? Like, I mean, you have real estate, you have venture companies, and you mentioned something before, like you wanted to talk about like family offices, and then you built a family office, but what's the infrastructure around you that allows you to sort of manage all of this without dropping the ball on anything, or not paying attention to something that you should be paying attention to? Because there's a point where you should have a team that eventually supports.
So I'm taking the AI approach to that, actually. So we've, through software and automations, the past few years have really automated a lot of the functionality that goes along with that, of keeping track of things, of making sure that nothing slips through the cracks, and marking things to market, and doing a lot of other things that go along with just the mechanics of a family office and an investment firm. So I've always been really good at that, kind of taking what can be automated and automating it through software. We, either through programming it ourselves or using different software in conjunction with each other. I think I don't think I know, because I speak to a lot of other family offices. I'm probably a lot more technologically advanced than a lot of them are.
So you have like reporting and whatnot on all your portcos?
Absolutely. And we keep track of everything. And it's refreshed daily, actually, even like to a degree.
Really?
Yeah. And funds and all these other things that we're in.
So you have it doesn't have to be like a custom dashboard, but you have some way of checking all the portfolio.
Yeah, it is a custom dashboard.
Actually?
Yeah.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like we have business intelligence.
Yeah.
We know like where we're losing, where we're winning, those types of things. But there are people that work. I still have an operations person and that kind of thing. But you'd be surprised how much one person can really do. So the one really good person can do the work of 25 people, but an automation can do a lot more. So we really can't. We turned everything into standard operating procedures, and then most of these standard operating procedures you can automate most of the steps of it. If you really think about it and really know how to do it. So that's an interesting way of approaching it. The other thing I think is that if you look at family offices these days and you look at just like exited founders and stuff like that, they're a lot more sophisticated than they were before, and they want to be involved. Right? Like they want to underwrite and learn about the investments. That they're not just giving their money to like a wealth manager to do it for them, or to a fund where they don't know what the fund is going to invest in. They'd rather do individual deals where they can actually use their brain, use their expertise, use their network, use their, whatever it may be that gives them the edge to make a decision about an investment. And I think you're seeing that they're acting a lot more like endowments, that and also allocating like that too. So they're doing a lot more venture. They're doing a lot more sophisticated things that really bigger investors do, and they may not be anywhere near as big as an endowment.
But they're trying to modernize, and they're trying to act like...
Yes, and they're also taking the same kind of investment approaches and allocation approaches.
What were they doing? Like, what was so explain what family offices were doing, for example, like 10 years ago compared to...
I don't even think there really were. Most of the time you were going to like UBS or Citigroup or JP Morgan or whatever, and then they would just manage your money for you. And then they would put you into like a bunch of funds. They would make fees on.
Yeah.
and then put your money into a bunch of stocks that they have analysts for, and they charge you fees on that too. And then, they make you use their bank accounts. And then, then they put you in some bonds, and then they kind of like would advise you in that.
So the concept of the family office started, it ended up being almost like a very basic investment vehicle, and then it's evolving to the point where it can be its own fund.
Yeah, it's almost like a business. You're running it like an investment firm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're doing a lot more sophisticated things. There are things that are called multifamily offices, where many family offices come in under one roof and they share resources, like a CFO, like a CIO, like an investment officer, like reporting systems, because they can get scale and that thing. So,
and in that, I mean, I would assume that if you have your systems in place and your automations, there like one person can manage a very large portfolio, or a small team can manage a huge portfolio. And do you do like, I mean,
I know some guys that have like billions of dollars on their management and have like 5 people working.
Have you built out a team yet, or is it mostly you?
It's just me and just a few other people.
Okay, so do you think you'd ever is like you turn like more into professional investment?
Part of the reason why I didn't want to start another company is because at the end of the day, I really did not. I was the worst at employees. So I never, that was like my weak spot always.
So funny. Because you've built, even, I mean, you actually built businesses without lots of employees,
yes,
even though you had great revenue.
Yes. So that was my hardest thing to overcome. And so I compensated for it through this other method. And so I suck at it, just to be honest with you. Like I have to work on it. And I did it because I had no other choice to do it. But I actually don't want it. Like, I don't want something where I have to go in and, I have like 20 people or 50 people working for me. And then like all these people are like, it's just the stress level on that is just like, it's not worth it for me.
It's so funny how different people perceive stress. How you like that to you is like a lot of stress.
It is, because I feel obliged to those people.
So you will never raise a fund, I don't think.
No, the worst thing is other people's money. You do not want other people's money.
You know that like I agree with you because it's very stressful, but that's opposite advice from what people give. They say don't use your own money, use other people's money, use OPM, go invest, go raise a fund.
Listen, I've done it a couple of times. It's not, and I've only done it for very unique situations where the people who are coming in with me are very sophisticated and they're grown-ups and they know if they lose their money, like I don't feel bad for them if they did, because they're big boys, right? But at the end of the day, you can either become their best friend if they make a lot of money, or if they lose their money, you can lose friends. And you have to understand that might, is that worth it for you? And I don't know. I feel like if you're a good investor, why would you want other people's money other than to leverage it, I guess, but again, it goes to when's enough, right? If, like even if you look at like Renaissance Technologies or these other guys, like their best fund is their medallion fund. They're the only ones that are in that fund. It's only their money.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yes.
So they use other people's money
for their shittier other funds, let's just say, right? But like, if you want to know what fund to go into, see how much money of the principal is in that fund. And that'll probably give you a good indication of whether that's a good fund to go into.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
That's very good advice.
Yeah.
What did we not talk about? We went through a lot of different things.
Oh, man.
We went through the whole JoonBug journey, easy texting journey, investment.
I think you and I have a lot of, kind of synergies in the health and wellness portion of things.
Trying.
We got you into sauna through Gary and cold plunges.
Do you have like a routine that's worked well for you, like for just I guess just operating at your best self, highest level?
Yeah, I'm 47, so the thing that had the most thing for me is TRT. Actually, I did TRT and it really changed everything for me. I take very, very low dose, but it really, at my age, it makes a huge difference in the way you feel and your energy levels and getting results from your workouts and that kind of thing.
I think men don't pay attention enough to their hormones and their health, and they think that just like feeling shitty as you get older is normal.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I've aches and pains in places I never had before. I've tried some things like peptide therapies and stuff. They didn't really work for me, and I did NAD. I tried a lot of stuff. TRTs had the most significant real world impact for me.
And it was like not even a significant dose, because as men, like your testosterone does decline like significantly.
Yes,
it's
but
not like
even a small increase makes a huge difference in the way you feel, the way you function, your sleep. I started taking magnesium pills before I go to sleep, and it changed my sleep a lot. That's another thing that had a big effect on me. Hot cold therapy, definitely. Although I haven't been doing it as much.
You told me to get a sauna in here so we can do the podcast in the sauna.
We'll do a sauna podcast.
We should do that at Gary's place. Actually.
Yes.
He would be so down.
Gary would love it. He loves that sauna, man. I see it. I mean, I have one indoors in my apartment that I use. It's like a infrared one. I got it right before COVID, so I got lucky.
No, I'm trying to think. Like, did you start taking care of yourself after you sold? Were you so focused into the business that you were letting your health lapse? Yeah.
I mean, I
never knew you back then, so I don't know.
No, yeah, I did. And then even after, I was so used to that. And then, for me, actually, this is interesting. I think this might be valuable to the people who are listening. At 40, and by the way, I've never been like really overweight. You know, I've been pretty in shape. I would work out, maybe not so often, but I would work out. At 40, I took my blood, and my doctor was like, "You're pre-diabetic." And I'm like, "What? How am I pre-diabetic? I'm not fat. I'm not, I didn't even really eat that much."
Like, were you the same size as you are right now?
Maybe like 10 pounds.
Not huge.
Not huge. I'm 6'1", so 10 pounds isn't going to be so crazy. And so I got scared because he's like, "Oh, you got to go on diabetes medicine." And I didn't know, by the way, metformin, it's a longevity thing now. So like people take it regardless of whether they're having diabetes or not. But I was really scared of it. And I was like,
why were you pre-diabetic if you weren't overweight?
There was no good answer to that.
That's
maybe
scary.
Because of the food. I was eating too much processed food. I was also not working out as much. I wasn't taking care of myself.
Were you on TRT then?
No.
So your testosterone was going down, and then
yeah, but I don't think TRT actually does anything for
no. But if you lose weight or whatever, then
absolutely, yeah. If you lose weight, you gain muscle. It helps with your blood sugar levels. So then I was like, I got to reverse this. He's like, there's no way to reverse it. That's what the doctor told me. You have to take medicine, and you have to kind of lower the amount of carbs and sugar that you eat, and also work out more often. So I did a lot of research, and I found this thing called Mastering Diabetes, which is actually a program. And I went on the program, and the program was counterintuitive to anything you could imagine. It was low protein, low fat, high carbs, whole foods, no oil. Okay. And by the way,
like rice and potatoes all day? Like, what were you eating?
I was eating pasta with tomato sauce that had no oil. I would make the tomatoes. I'd buy strained tomatoes, and I put herbs and spices in it. I was eating kamut bread with peanut butter in the morning. I would have salads, obviously. Rice, brown rice, potatoes, whole wheat tortillas. They have this thing called forks over knives where you can. They had all these recipes that you could it was also vegan, so they didn't want you to eat animal protein because it's a little counterintuitive, but it was developed by type 1 diabetics that are biochemists, and type 1 diabetics, they don't produce insulin. So it's a different kind of diabetes. Type 2 is like what I had, where, I was what's called insulin resistant. And so my body made the insulin, but it wasn't uptaking the insulin. And so they understood that what happens is when you have too much fat, and to a degree protein, but by a different mechanism, it goes into your cells and it denatures the cell membrane to a way that where insulin binds to the cell membranes, it can't bind properly. And so you become insulin resistant when your cells are full of fat. And so their they're saying like oil, for example, any kind of oil, I'm not talking about just olive oil or any kind of oil, is actually considered a processed food, because as a practical matter, you're not supposed to sit down and have 25 olives with each meal. If you think about it, right?
Yeah. When you say it out loud, it makes sense.
Yeah, but that's what you're doing. You cook your food with oil. You put oil on your salad.
And pour olive tree right behind you.
Yeah, you dip your bread in oil.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, and also half your calories come from that. It's the most condensed amount of calories you can imagine. And so even if you can simply just do that part, it makes a big difference. I got down to like 7% body fat in 6 months. I was ripped. I'd never been that ripped, even in high school. And I was really ripped in high school.
And this was no protein though. So what do you...
Very low protein. I would have plant protein shakes. So you could have plant protein shakes.
And were you working out?
Yeah, working out every day. I was lifting 4 times a week. But I got crazy, and I wasn't on TRT, by the way, at that time. And I got crazy.
It's hard to get ripped if you have low testosterone.
So then as I got those results, I started looking into other things that I was doing. And then I started doing, by the way, I'm not at 7% body fat right now. I can't, it's very hard to eat out and not have oil. If you try and do it, you'll see how much oil goes into every food that restaurants give.
Yeah, well, they make it taste good. The vegetables are cooked in butter and
oil.
Steak is injected with butter and
yes. Yeah. So unless you're bringing your own food or preparing it at home, which is also a big pain in the ass, which I did, but I also brought my blood sugar down, my A1C down, that my doctor was baffled. He's like, how did you reverse your...
It was this diet.
And I was on high carb, by the way. Yeah. High carb. Whole carbs. Whole foods. Whole carbs. And that, I still do mostly that kind of diet, but I can't do it to the same extreme as I did before. I had little back problems and some other issues.
But still, I mean, so this was like kind of like the start of your health journey, which is awesome. And then you went on TRT after that. So now you're feeling like, I mean, and you don't have to be walking around at 7%. Like who needs that? I mean,
no, I'm married with 3 kids.
Yeah, like
I'm not like a Calvin Klein model or anything like that.
Dude, you still look good.
Thanks.
I saw you posted a picture of a story on Instagram a while back, and you're still pretty ripped. Like,
yeah, I still have. Well, TRT does that, so you get like
but you
good
can still
results.
Eat out. You can enjoy life a little bit.
Yes, it's also I have a very young baby, so it takes up a lot of my time right now.
But like in terms of like energy levels, what diet do you feel works? Because now you do TRT, you work out, you have a good diet, you do hot and cold, like sauna and whatnot, and cold plunge, I guess. What's like the energy levels that you feel right now?
I pretty much wake up around like 5:30 in the morning, and I go to sleep on average between 9 and 10.
That's early.
Yeah, I do, but like I need to try and get the 8 hours. I put my kids to sleep and then I go to sleep pretty much. I try to, so I think that's a full day.
Do you still keep the same diet or slightly modified?
It's slightly modified. I do eat animal protein. I actually, the thing that got me off of it is that I got COVID and I just couldn't recover without that animal protein for real. I was craving it.
That's so interesting when your body's like super sick, what it's looking for.
Yeah, and so I don't really eat red meat that often, although I'll have a steak here and there.
Like chicken.
But I eat chicken, fish and that kind of stuff. And I eat out more often than I did before. But what I was doing before that I'm trying to do now is, that worked really well, is I would look at the menu of where I'm going beforehand for like 5 minutes. And I would pick what I wanted to eat before I was starving. And so I would make better choices usually, and like healthier choices. And I would I'd always end up modifying whatever it is that they have and making a better choice. Because if you do it in the moment, again, it's emotional. You're hungry.
It all comes back to the decision making, how to make better decisions.
Yeah. Well, this is what you're talking about, right? We were talking about, so for your health and that kind of stuff, I think you could do the eating out portion just as long as you're conscious of it, right? And you make deliberate choices.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I've done that too, like where I look at the menu before I go out. And I think it's just, like, I always try and, I try and not be too severe with my diet. I'll focus on like eating healthy for 90% of the day or even like 90% of the week. And then like 1 or 2 days I won't mind, or 1 or 2 meals I don't care as much. It just makes it a little bit easier to live and be social and go out and have fun and have friends and whatnot.
I mean, especially in Miami.
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Out all the time.
So I tried intermittent fasting too.
I've done that.
It didn't do very much for me. The benefits didn't outweigh the cost.
I think it's more of a psychological thing. Like if you just don't focus on eating and you're drinking coffee or whatever and you're just going about your day, and then you just have less time to eat, well, yeah, of course you're going to eat less calories, unless you just try to force feed yourself, which is, I mean, that's avoiding the whole point of it, right?
Absolutely. But I did some crazy things where I didn't eat for 3 days or whatever.
You tried every diet.
I tried.
What's the ritual is there like a piece of the ritual or the morning routine that really is like a little bit different, or that you think people would benefit from outside of just waking up early, working out? Is there anything else?
I reserve a certain part of my morning for my kids. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's unusual, because I think a lot of people love their kids and want to spend time with them.
Important though.
Yeah, it really is. And I purposefully drive them to school so that they're like a captured audience.
I love that.
And
I love that.
And I don't, like, sometimes as a treat, I let them listen to music for a little bit of it, but I talk to them and I listen to them. And it does a lot for them, I think. I talk to them about real things. I tell them about, my parents that aren't alive. I tell them about stories of things that happened to me when I was younger that they're interested in, that I learned about. Some of them are old enough that they're learning about money a little bit right now. Like they're getting their first debit card, or, but mostly it's like talking about Harry Potter, this or the other thing. You know what I mean?
No, but it's like, I mean, it sounds so simple, but you're just creating like this dedicated time for them.
Yes. Yeah. It also kind of centers you and makes you realize, that this is what you're doing it all for, because, you're not going to be here at the end of the day.
And I think it's easy to lose sight of what you do it for.
Yeah. Because all you have, is, you really, all you have is now. I'm a very big, I don't believe in legacy and those types of things. I think like everyone's going to be forgotten eventually.
They will. I mean, it's true. They will be.
Yes. Everyone's.
The Queen of England is already being forgotten. So
yes. I mean, there's nothing special about you or me. And you're special in this moment that you're on the earth, to yourself and to the people immediately around you. So you might as well make the best of it. But like, to think of legacy and like, all these other things, I think that's a lot of ego.
And that's good advice. If people want to connect with you and just what do you want people to, like, where are you going in the future? I mean, I guess if people want to look at the portfolio you're building, but
I make my portfolio public.
Yeah.
Yeah. I put it on my website.
Okay. So if people want to connect with you, where do they go?
I actually have a contact page that I read every single email and I respond to every email.
What's your website? Is it ShaneNeman.com? Good domain.
Yeah. I get a lot. Like I don't get a little bit. I get a lot of emails, and most of them are startups that are pitching me. And 95% of them is like, I can tell immediately that they're not thing, but I have a methodology that I think is different than a lot of other people, is that I give them resources that I've built over the years of what to do to better themselves in terms of, and I also give them resources in terms of list of other VCs that would be appropriate for them.
That's good. That's super nice.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's better than no response.
no, yeah, no. Well, if someone is taking the time to do it, it might take me a week or two to respond to them, but I respond to them. I respond to everybody, really, honestly, because I was in their shoes. And, I think it's, if you took the time to, obviously, unless it's spam, right? I'm not always right. But, I'll take a few moments to respond to you. And then it's funny because there have been some cold emails that I've gotten where I've done major investments.
What would an entrepreneur have to say to stand out or to be impressive outside of I
can tell you, whoever tells you this is not true. If there's a way that you can find someone who knows me to recommend you to me, that makes a big difference. And that always makes a difference to everyone. And if someone tells you that otherwise, they're lying to you, because everyone's looking through a filter of signal. So if you know someone that I know and it's coming from them, it's already past some signal for me. The other thing is, I think you have to learn marketing, and if you can in 2-3 sentences get your point across and be impactful, that grabs my attention. I mean, I'm human just like everyone else is, right? If I'm skimming through these emails, right? And if I see something that catches my eye, I'm going to be like, do a double take, right? And that's a girl, Shani, did that to me a couple of years ago.
What was her company?
Allermy, which is a custom compounded nasal allergy spray that's prescription. So it's a telemedicine. She had done her research, saw that we had invested in an apostrophe that got bought by Hims, which is did the same thing for dermatology for like acne and Latisse and that kind of stuff. And she wrote this really amazing, 3-sentence email to me, and I replied to her, and then she replied to me something very thoughtful back, and I got on a call with her, and I didn't invest initially. I said, listen, I really like you, but this is way too thing. Let me introduce you to a couple of other guys that I know very, very, very well. I introduced her. She was coachable. She did exactly what they said. And then we ended up taking her entire seed round, which is like a $3 million round, and doing it. And now she's a super successful business. All
from a cold email.
And I also helped her get her A round done. I introduced her to a bunch of VCs, Origin being one of them that did it, which is one of the like top VCs. And it's a very significant company now, 2 years later.
That's amazing. So I don't get as many pitches as you do because I don't put myself out there as an investor, but I see it from the lens of people trying to get on the podcast.
Absolutely.
And I must probably get 50 emails a day.
Well, yeah. It's
just insane. But dude, it's like walls of text. It's just like 4 paragraphs.
No one's going to read them.
No one can read this. No one. And it sucks because usually it's the founder reaching out themselves. But for me, it's these agencies that I know people are paying these huge retainers to get them on podcasts, and they're just doing the shittiest job.
So I learned this
you must have dealt with this when you were trying to do a book tour a couple of years ago.
So actually, I didn't end up doing it. I sold a good amount of the book, but this book was never meant to be like, I knew it was a money loser. It was never a money maker for me. It was a passion project. The reason why I even wrote it is because I dealt with so many founders, and I was giving them the same advice over and over again. And I'm like, hey, I could just write a book on this. And how do I write a non-cliche book where you're not hearing the same shit that you hear from everyone else? So I was like, hey, I think it's kind of interesting to take this nightlife approach, have some interesting stories in it, and then kind of give you how I learned those lessons and how I used it in easy texting and then how I use it in venture now. So at the end of each chapter is a lesson. At the end of each chapter, I actually show you how I used it again. So, it's pretty practical in that manner. But, you know, I learned in easy texting when I first tried to sell this to people, I did the same thing. I made these like white papers and I, you know, like had a chart and I would send this like 2-page email to people and it was crickets. And then I was like, wait, I had a conversation with this Israeli guy actually on the phone. And I started trying to explain to him what easy texting is. And he's like, don't talk to me like that. Just tell me what it is. And you have 1 minute to tell, 1 second to tell me what it is.
Very Israeli.
Yeah. And then I was like, how do I tell this guy in one sentence? How can I boil it down to one? I was like, it's impossible. But then I was just like, I just blurted out. I was like, I have a way that you can automatically get everyone's phone numbers and then text them the next day or the next week about your next event or your next sale. He's like, really? And I was like, he thought it was like some automagical machine that you put in like your thing and it like sucks everyone's cell phone number inside it, right? You're like, this guy, like I had like hit a nerve with this guy and I'm like, holy shit, if I could, I was like, yeah, do you want me to show you? I'll demo it to you. He's like, do you have time right now? I was like, yes, let's do it right now. So I got, you know, at that time, it's 2005, there wasn't even Zoom. So I was just like, log in, use these credentials. You know, I had a demo account. He sent himself a text message and the light bulb went off. And then I was like, I'm doing this all wrong. So I changed it to 2-sentence email, exactly what I said, you know, with a catchy 2-sentence, 2-word, you know, subject. And I was getting demos left and right. And the minute I would demo someone, it was a 90% close rate.
People overcomplicate business.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like I was doing anything special, you know? It was text messages. It's nothing special. For real.
Yeah, I know, but it's like just simplifying it. Just simplify.
Yeah, no one's gonna read it. You're busy. Look at how busy you are. No one's gonna read it. You literally have to think in 160 characters like Twitter in this day and age.
I think always. I mean, I still don't get how people, because I get hit up on LinkedIn with these paragraphs. I get hit up with email with these paragraphs, and it's just like, it's too much. It's too much. But when somebody says something like, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I can talk about. Oh, and by the way, I left you like a review and I rated your podcast 5-star. Like literally 3 sentences and it would stand out from everything else. Absolutely. I'd be like, oh shit, thanks for the review. Yeah. Thanks for the rating. Yes. And thank you for telling me exactly what you've done in 1 sentence. Absolutely. That's it. And it maybe the only other thing that you could add would be like a link to a show that you've done before so I can watch.
Absolutely.
So simple.
Absolutely. And you should make sure your profile is well done.
Yeah.
Because I will click on your profile and if I see this, like you haven't sat there and made your LinkedIn look to the decent. Fullest it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Then why, you know, if you're not spending time on yourself, why would I spend time on you? Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Just some of and I don't understand why people still try and do cold outreach the way that they do with these walls of text, and it's so ineffective.
It is, but it's you know, it's an acquired skill.
Is that how I was actually going to ask you this and I forgot to ask you before. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I said, you know, that's probably one of the most important skills a founder needs to have.
Being able to sell and market.
Sell themselves.
1000%. I was going to say, one of the questions I had about easy texting, because you grew it so large without a big team. Was there like a lesson for entrepreneurs about how you grew it? Because you didn't jump on demos with 10,000 people. You probably did a lot of another Paul Graham.
I did it through product. I was like, I gotta stay true to the name of this thing, easy texting. Yeah. And if it's not easy, that like my grandma can log in and know how to send a text message, then we're doing something wrong. And although I couldn't do demos for people, we made it self-sign up like MailChimp.
Like a self-serve.
Like you self-sign up.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Then you put your credit card in and then you can use it. We give you like a free trial and then just like any other SaaS business, right? But we made the product at that time, and you have to realize this 2005, like we had, when you would come in, you get a product tour, like a demo, like that's pretty commonplace now, but it wasn't then before. And I would end up doing a lot of the support tickets myself because I wanted to know what's wrong with the system that someone couldn't figure out how to do something and how I fixed that through the software so that we would get less support tickets.
So you were looking through and you were just looking at the biggest problems people had, and then you were putting that on the product roadmap.
I spent like at least 2 days a week doing tickets and picking up the phone.
Really?
Listening to the, yes.
Do you find a lot of founders don't like doing the hard work?
Yes, that's a shitty job, dude. No one wants to do it. But well, it depends on what stage you're in. You know, a lot of founders are doing every job, right? When they're very, very young. But in order to kind of, I think to keep the magic going, you have to stay as low to the ground as possible. You know, you can't lose sight of what made you successful. And you have to constantly be in fear of losing it and improving, for real. You do. I did something even more interesting. I was afraid that people were going to realize how good of a business this is. I white labeled the software and created 6 or 9 other websites like club texting, church texting, this texting, that were like front-facing websites. And then I rebranded the software to that. And then I ran ads against myself so that when you would search for text messaging software, there wouldn't just be easy texting, because that's what was happening. Like, I wanted people to think that this is like a real market and there are competitors. So they wouldn't enter the market.
That's so funny. I've never heard that before. I've never heard anyone do that before. So you created your own fake competition.
It didn't make a lot of sense to people, but it made sense to me.
I actually do think it makes sense.
At the time, it didn't make sense to a lot of people because I was ending up paying double or triple for the clicks, because someone would click on like 3 of them instead of 1, especially for paid clicks. And at that time, you know, there wasn't so much social media advertising. It was mainly through Google AdWords, right? And so, but I'm like, you know what? I'd rather pay triple for that person and them, you know, like...
And no competitors come into the market.
Yeah. I even like made all different kinds of things. Like I made a version of the software that was like had limited functionality, and we called it like cheap texting. So it was like half the price, you know, so it looked like there was real competition.
That's really funny. Yeah. What are other like what's like another way that you like growth hacked it? Because you hacked your competition. What's another way that you like, because obviously, okay, so like boots on the ground, you're a founder, you're answering calls, you're doing support tickets, cool. You understand what's not working, you build it into your product. You made it seem like there's a whole market when there wasn't. Yeah. What are some other like growth hack things that you did that were really good? Because I know you did a lot with JoonBug, but I think I know less about Easy Text.
We decided to do, you know, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel. What we realized was, like, if you look at MailChimp or you look at like Constant Contact, how would you find out about MailChimp or Constant Contact? You get an email.
Oh, yeah.
And at the bottom, it would say sent by MailChimp on it.
You know, Hotmail did that? Yeah. Hotmail did that. It said like made with love. Yes, and that's how they... So
what we did is we couldn't like really... We tried this thing where we gave a free version that would say easy texting on the bottom or discounted. That didn't really work out really well. But what we did figure out is that people were looking up the phone number that it was being sent by. They were Googling it. So then we created landing pages for anybody and ads for anybody searching for that phone number.
How did that, so when they search that phone number on Google, what would the landing page say?
It would say start texting through, you know, easy texting and build your...
And then that's how you brought them in. That was your funnel.
Correct. So like we realized that you know, because so people would look to see what that phone number was or how to reverse engineer how someone sent it.
That's so funny. So, I mean, like, you have to know, like, you were so in the weeds, though. You understood the customer's behavior. Like,
I was the customer initially. If you think about it, for JoonBug, right? So we were like, we took the best, we literally just took the playbook of what the ESPs did and just learned from the best of what they did. Really good customer service, a phone number that people could call. Like, Constant Contact was different than MailChimp because you could call them and they would help you on the phone. MailChimp would only do email. Cost effective, easy to use, you know, like the three things for us was like, you have to be, the three things of the software that had to always be working and 24 hours a day was sending, receiving, text, and paying. If those three things work, everything else is like secondary and tertiary is like the bells, we called it the bells and whistles.
yeah.
They're just extra. People want to send and receive text and pay for it. And that's it.
Dude, were you ever, I mean, like, looking back, obviously there's tons of opportunity and you could have taken this and put it into any industry, but did you ever think about taking like JoonBug and just putting it into any other industry? Like, because you had this whole little like business in a box.
No, I think that it was so evergreen at that time. I mean, we could have done more and more events and we could have done more and more stuff, you know, that it would have. For easy texting, I really, well, initially we had called it club texting and then we changed it to easy texting because I realized that this is not just for nightclubs, right? Yeah. And so I had the vision that developers would integrate texting into all their stuff, into all their software. And so we created an API initially, but Twilio did it much better than we did. They only went after the developer.
I'm thinking of Twilio, and Twilio is like a huge company now.
Yeah, it is. Well, so is Easy Texting. It's a really big company now. Very big company.
Are you happy that you sold when you did?
Absolutely. I mean, would I have made more money? Who knows? Probably yes. I don't know. Or I might have died. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like when the options are die or make more money.
I don't know. Maybe I would have had a heart attack because I was working so much. But no, I got to like, oh my God, I got to move to Miami. I got to experience my daughter growing up, my son growing up.
That's important.
No, I don't regret it. And part of, you know, part of making good decisions is knowing when to leave the party, which is the last chapter of my book. You know, it's knowing when to leave the party, right? It's a hard thing to gauge. When is the right time to leave? When you're on top, when you're ascending to the top, when you're starting to descend from the top. How do you know that you're at the top? You don't.
Did you think about that as you were building? Because it seems like your exits actually just sort of came at you fast. Like,
yeah, I think for me it was more a practical approach to things.
But when you talk to founders who you invest in, do you tell them to think about that life cycle of the company ahead of time?
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, I'm investing to make money. I'm not investing to support someone's lifestyle. That's not a charity.
No, I know.
So like, you know, like I'm trying to make money just like they are.
But when you invest in them, do you agree on like, okay, so this is how long we're going to be in this together?
Well, yeah, obviously if it's early, everyone knows, no one knows what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah, the founder should still be, they should know if they're going to look at a strategic or they want to sell to private equity. Or if they're going to take it to IPO, well, they should know.
I think it's hard to tell in the very early stages, to be honest. But if you look at the companies at the early stages that are getting the highest valuations, they are typically the post-exited founders. So they've either had one or two exits before, and so they've built a track record. And so as an investor, you feel you're willing to pay a premium for that because you know they know how to,
and I guess you trust them a little bit more to figure it out.
Absolutely, and they know that an exit needs to happen, right?
Yes.
Eventually.
All right. Last thing I always like to ask is, you've had a great career, built several companies, one not so successful, two very successful. Now you invest, now you're focused on family. If you go back and tell your 20-year-old self one lesson, what would it be?
I would learn how to have invested earlier. I wish I knew how the mechanics of investing, the importance of investing, what compounding is, because I never did that during JoonBug and easy texting. I invested in my business.
But you never took off the money off the table and put it into other investment.
No, and had I done that, by the way, I'm not complaining I'm a very fortunate person in my life, despite some really bad things that happened to me. But if I had done that, I would have been in a whole other level. And it's very hard for a 20-year-old to understand how much can happen in 10 to 15 years and how much money can compound. And had I just not even done anything that sophisticated, just bought SPY, maybe even just, bought a piece of real estate or, anything, and just let it be and just did it consistently. I wish I had done that because I build profitable businesses and I could have done it, but I didn't. I always saw my business as my source of wealth.
So you just got very good at making money.
Correct. I thought that was the way that you make wealth.
Not investing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good lesson too. And that's also why, again, it's like just because you're a good business owner, an entrepreneur doesn't mean you're a good investor.
No, because it's so counter to what business owners do. Investing, it's hard to make that first leap of putting the money in, but the more you do after you put that money in, the worse your outcome.
Exactly. So it's, and in business, you got to keep.
Yes, or you're dead.
Yeah. So it's the opposite. It's like, just stop.
Yes.
Put the money
just
in.
Put it in and shut up.
Yeah.
That's it. Just put it in and STFU and just keep doing it, and then wake up in 15 years and be like, holy shit, I'm glad I did that. So it's not a regret, obviously, but if I could give myself a piece of advice, that's a piece of advice. And I don't know, maybe have a little bit more fun. I could have had a lot of fun that I didn't have. That's it.
Oh, whatever, man.
I had fun. I didn't have the kind of fun that people would think that you have.
I think that kind of fun is overrated. Yeah. I think that kind of fun Scott Harrison had a lot of that kind of fun. Yeah. And I think, that it gets old pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it gets old pretty quick. I think that what you've optimized for in your life, which is business success, but then ultimately family, I think that's the most fulfilling thing you can ever optimize for.
Well, that was the thing. I actually got married and had kids latest out of all my close friends from growing up.
You were still young when you had kids.
I had my first child when I was 37. That's pretty late, I think. And I got married just a few years before that. So I was seeing my cousins or whatever, my friends had kids, and I'm like, all right, you have fun. I'm going out tonight. Their kids were cute and stuff, but I didn't get it. But having a kid is experiential. It's impossible to explain it to someone. And so I get it now, obviously.
But when you're going into clubs every night, you weren't even doing clubs the way a lot of people do clubs because you had these long-term girlfriends. But if you're going to clubs every night, it's still, you're like, okay, well, when if I have a kid, I can't be out late anymore for
No, and you also when you're in work mode and founder mode, you're very selfish. You're very selfish. I was very selfish, absolutely.
And that's why I think it's important that, okay, so fine, you're not going out, you're not partying, but as an entrepreneur, if you're going to have kids, you have to realize that something else is going to take all your attention. And I'm actively, even for myself, I'm actively understanding that, okay, I work a lot now, but I'm trying to architect something that doesn't take so much of my time so I can be present.
Yeah. So now I actually give up a lot of my opportunities because Yes. I mean, there are opportunities that I have lost that I could have made an incredible return on, but at the cost of, not having time to do the other things that I want to do and spend time with my kids.